The sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty streets of Port Harcourt as Annabel dragged her bare feet forward, one hand protectively cradling the swell of her pregnant belly. She was 11 years old, a child carrying a child, with nowhere to go and utterly alone. Madame Margaret's voice still echoed in her head, sharp as broken glass. "Get out of my house, you filthy little slut! Look at you, a disgrace! Go die in the gutter with your bastard! I never want to see your face again." The memory was vivid. The slam of the heavy oak door, the decisive final click of the bolt. She had no family to run to. Her parents were dead. The streets was now her home, her bed, her torment. Days turned into weeks. Weeks bled into months. Annabel became a familiar tragic sight. A small, pregnant girl huddled by the market, her hand outstretched, her eyes hollowed out by a hunger that never ceased. "Anything for me and my baby, please?" her tiny voice would whisper. Passers-by would stare, their whispers like the sting of 1,000 ants. "Don't look, my dear," a mother instructed her young daughter, pulling her away. "That is what happens to bad children. Harlot. At her age, she should be in school, not carrying a pot belly." An old man grumbled, shaking his head in disgust. "Another one?" A woman balancing a tray of fish on her head spat out. "These girls open their legs for any man with a meat pie, and this is the result. What kind of life is this?" Another stranger shook his head as he walked past. "Look at that one, already carrying a child at her age." A woman selling Gary sneered with disgust written all over her face. Annabel would lower her head, letting her matted hair hide the hot tears that streamed down her face. Their words were a daily beating, each one a fresh bruise on her already shattered heart. She would hug her belly tighter, a silent promise to the life within that she would endure. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Annabel had once been the princess of a loving home, living in a house full of light and joy. After her mother died, her father had remarried a woman named Margaret, the housemaid. "She will be a new mother to you," her father had promised, his eyes full of hope. And for a time, she was. Margaret was perfect. She was a miracle. She braided Annabel's hair, sang her to sleep, and helped her with her schoolwork. Her father had watched, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You are a gift, Margaret, a true gift to this family." But after Annabel's father married her, a slow, creeping darkness began. He developed a cough that never left, a sickness that baffled doctors. "It is just stress from work, my love," Margaret would say. Margaret nursed him with a devotion that everyone admired, always with a special tea in her hand, a tea that carried a slow poison. "Papa, you look so tired," Annabel had said one evening, her small hand on his forehead. "Maybe you shouldn't drink the tea tonight." Margaret had turned from the kitchen, her smile tight. "Nonsense, sweet girl. This is what makes your papa strong. It is full of special herbs. Now, let him be." He drank the tea, and he grew weaker and weaker until he eventually died. The day after the funeral, the silence in the house was different. It was not the quiet of grief. It was the cold, heavy silence of a tomb. Annabel was sitting on the stairs, hugging her knees, when the front door opened. A man she had never seen before walked in, dropping a worn leather bag on the marble floor. He had a cruel, thin mouth and eyes that swept over the room with a look of ownership. Margaret followed him in. Her face, which had been a mask of sorrow for days, was now utterly blank. "Mama?" Annabel asked, her voice small. Margaret's head snapped towards her. Her eyes were like chips of ice. "Don't you ever," she said, her voice low and venomous, "call me that again. From now on, you will call me Madam. Is that understood?" Annabel flinched back as if struck. I don't understand." "Then let me make it simple for you," Margaret said, stepping closer. The man, Joe, who was Margaret's lover, watched with a smirk. "Your free ride is over. The maids have been dismissed. You live in this house, you will earn your keep. You will cook, you will clean, you will work, you will earn the air you breathe in my house, and you will do exactly as you are told. Now, get to the kitchen. It's disgusting." Hunger became Annabel's new reality. It was a living thing inside her, clawing at her insides. One afternoon, the hunger was so fierce it made the world swim before her eyes. The rich, spicy scent of agouti soup, Margaret's favorite, wafted from the kitchen. She knew it was forbidden, a cardinal sin, but her body moved on its own. Inside, the pot sat on the stove. Her hand trembled as she lifted the lid. The aroma was dizzying, a promise of life. Whack! An explosive pain shot across her back, sending her staggering into the counter. Margaret stood there, her face contorted in a snarl, a long wooden spoon in her hand. "Thief!" she shrieked. "You ungrateful little rat! Stealing my food! I was so hungry," Annabel sobbed, clutching her back. "Hungry?" Margaret grabbed a handful of Annabel's hair, yanking her head back. "You will know real hunger. You are just like your mother, always wanting what isn't yours. Now you will learn." The beating was methodical and brutal. When it was over, Annabel was a crumpled heap on the floor, the scent of the soup now mingling with the metallic tang of her own tears. The streets, she realized, were kinder. Begging gave her enough for a piece of bread, a handful of Gary. It was enough to survive. Her life settled into a grim routine of servitude and begging until the day Joe called her name. Margaret was out. Annabel was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the hallway tile, when his voice cut through the silence. "Annabel, get in here." It was strange. He never spoke to her. She wiped her hands on her ragged dress and hurried to the living room. He was slouched on the sofa, pointing a faction. Nothing. "Clean this up," he said, his voice flat. "And if you ever tell her, I'll say you begged for it. Who do you think she'll believe?" She watched him walk away, a hollowed-out thing on the floor of her father's house. She cried then, not loud sobs, but the silent, shuddering tears of someone who had lost the very last piece of herself. She got up, dressed, and cleaned the mess. But the stain was now inside her. But the evidence grew inside her. The morning sickness, the profound exhaustion, and then the slow, undeniable swelling of her stomach. She hid it under her father's old shirts, her body a secret she carried with terror. But secrets like that do not keep. Margaret cornered her in the hallway one afternoon, her eyes narrowed to slits. She looked Annabel up and down, and a slow, ugly smile spread across her face. "So," she said softly, dangerously, "the little street rat has been rolling in the gutters." She jabbed a finger hard into Annabel's belly. "Who is the father? One of the beggars you share your crumbs with?" "No!" Annabel cried, stumbling back. "It's not... I didn't... Don't lie to me!" Margaret screamed, her voice erupting. "You bring this filth, this shame, into my house. The house your father built? She lunged, her hands like claws, and threw Annabel towards the door. "You are a whore, just like your useless mother. Get out! Go die in the gutter with your bastard!" She threw the door open and shoved Annabel out into the blinding sun, throwing her few ragged belongings onto the dirt after her, the door slamming shut. And so, she was back on the streets. But now she was not just begging for one life, but for two. She begged for her life, and the life of her unborn child. She watched other children with their parents and prayed to God to end her suffering. But soon enough, things were about to change. One fateful afternoon, as she sat under a mango tree, a black Prado SUV pulled up beside her. A well-dressed man stepped out. He looked at her, his eyes full of a sadness she recognized. The man introduced himself as Mr. David. "I live down the street," he explained, his voice gentle. And when a baby boy was born, he held him as if he were his own son. For the first time since her father's death, Annabel knew safety. She knew peace. Meanwhile, back at the old house, things began to fall apart for Margaret and Joe. They burned through Annabel's father's money with reckless abandon. On cars, on parties, on foolish investments. Their greed became their undoing. Joe, convinced he could double their remaining fortune, got involved in a shady smuggling deal. He put up the house as collateral without telling Margaret. When the deal went bad and the police got involved, everything collapsed. The truth came out. "You fool!" Margaret shrieked at him when the bank came to repossess the house. "You've lost everything." "Me?" Joe snarled back, his face purple with rage. "You're the one who spent half of it on useless jewelry." Their argument turned into a violent fight. In his fury, Joe shoved Margaret hard. She fell, her head striking the sharp corner of a glass table. He watched in horror as the life drained from her eyes. Then he fled, becoming a wanted man. Joe was caught a month later trying to cross the border. He was sentenced to life in prison. He had lost everything. He was now a useless man, a vegetable in a cell. The power he once wielded was gone. He was nothing. Without a home or money, Margaret's relatives forsook her. She was forced onto the streets to start begging. As the days went by, her appearance worsened. She grew thin and sick, her fine clothes replaced with rags. She looked no different from a mad woman. People ran away when they saw her, and children threw stones. She spent her days sleeping on dirty roads, under the scorching sun and the cold rain. But one day, as she sat under a bridge, begging for scraps from people passing by, she saw something her eyes couldn't believe. A black Prado SUV, the same model Joe used to drive, pulled up to a nearby supermarket. A woman who looked exactly like Annabel stepped out. She was no longer a skinny, frightened girl, but a confident, healthy young woman. A man, Mr. David, stepped out from the driver's side and opened the back door, helping Annabel lift out a beautiful baby boy. They were laughing, a happy family. Margaret's eyes widened in shock. She stared, her mouth agape, as she watched the new, happy life of the girl she had abandoned and left to die. Comment below if you would love to see a part 2 of this story. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting stories.